Dan Rivers had 30 seconds to decide. Leave the dying creature in the asteroid field or touch it and change everything. He chose wrong. Or maybe he chose right. Either way, his human life ended the moment golden fire poured from the dragon's eyes into his veins. The cargo freighter drifted through the asteroid field like a lost tooth in a gravel pit. Dan Rivers had been hauling freight for 12 years and knew better than to answer random distress beacons this far from civilized space. But the signal kept pulsing on his scanner, weak and fatting, like a heartbeat running out of time. He adjusted the controls and steered between two massive rocks that spun lazy circles around each other. His ship, the Rusty Pelican, groaned as he pushed it harder than the old girl liked. The beacon grew stronger. Whatever was out here, it was big. Dan squinted at his view screen. Something gleamed gold between the asteroids. Not metal, something else. Something that moved. His breath caught when he saw it properly. A creature floated in the void, easily 3 times the size of his ship. Wings stretched out like solar sails, each membrane thin enough to see stars through. Scales caught the distant sunlight and threw it back in amber waves. A dragon. An actual dragon, just like the legends from old Earth, except this one had been built for the stars. Blood drifted around it in frozen globules. The dragon was dying. Dan had never believed the stories about star dragons. Everyone said they were myths, ancient propaganda from the early colony days when people needed heroes to believe in. But here one was, real as rust, bleeding out in the darkness. The dragon's eye opened. It was the size of his cockpit window, golden and deep. Dan felt something push against his mind, not words exactly, but meaning. Help, please, not much time. His hands moved before his brain caught up. He sealed his pressure suit and opened the airlock. The small maneuvering pack on his back fired, carrying him across the gap between ship and creature. Up close, the dragon was even more impossible. Each scale was the size of his hand. The wings had patterns like circuit boards, glowing faint blue along the edges. Dan reached out and touched the dragon's neck. The scales were warm despite the cold of space. The dragon shuddered and that presence in his mind grew stronger. Images flooded through him. He saw nebulae from the inside, felt what it was like to dive through a star's corona, experienced the song of gravity wells and the taste of comet tails. He saw other dragons, hundreds of them, filling the sky above some world he did not recognize. Then darker images came, ships with black hulls, weapons that fired green light, dragons falling from the sky, their wings torn, cages, laboratories, screaming that had no sound but tore through the mind anyway. The dragon's name came to him without words, Ashara. She was old, older than human civilization. She was the last of her flight group, and she had been running for weeks. Ashara's massive head turned slightly. Her eye focused on Dan with terrible clarity. He felt her question in his bones. Will you carry it? Will you keep the fire alive? Dan did not understand, but he nodded anyway. What else could he do? Leave her to die alone in the dark. Ashara's eye began to glow brighter. Golden light spread from her pupil like sunrise. Dan tried to pull his hand back but could not move. The light flowed down her scales, across his glove, up his arm. It burned, but not with heat. It burned the way strong liquor burned, the way grief burned, the way purpose burned. Memories that were not his crashed through Dan's mind. He saw the first dragons emerge from dying stars, born from fusion and plasma. He saw them discover thought, then speech, then the old magic that let them bend space and gravity. He saw the pacts they made with younger species, the worlds they protected, the songs they sang that could be heard across solar systems. He saw betrayal, greed, humans and aliens alike hunting dragons for their organs, their blood, their bones, all of it worth fortunes to the right buyers. He saw Ashara's friends die one by one. He felt her rage and sorrow. The light grew blinding. Dan screamed inside his helmet, but the sound went nowhere. Every cell in his body felt like it was coming apart and being rebuilt. The dragon's heartbeat thundered through him, then began to slow. Boom, boom, boom. Ashara's eye dimmed. Her final thought touched Dan's mind like a whisper. Thank you, small one. Let them remember. Let them know we were real. The last heartbeat faded. The dragon went still. The golden light stopped flowing but did not fade. It stayed in Dan's body, crawling under his skin like electricity, pooling in his chest like molten glass. Dan hung in space, holding the neck of a dead god, while his own body began to glow from within. His veins lit up gold beneath his skin. His heartbeat felt wrong, too strong, too fast, like an engine redlining. He looked at his hands through the helmet. They were shaking. Light leaked from his fingertips. What had she done to him? Dan barely made it back to his ship. The maneuvering pack sputtered twice and his hands would not stop shaking. When he tumbled through the airlock and slammed it shut, he tore off his helmet and vomited on the deck. The vomit glowed faintly gold before fatting. He lay there for 10 minutes, breathing hard, staring at the ceiling. Every sound was too loud. The hum of the life support sounded like a roaring waterfall. The ping of his navigation computer felt like hammers on his skull. He could hear the asteroids tumbling outside, grinding against each other millions of kilometers away. Dan forced himself to stand. His legs worked but felt different, stronger, like springs wound too tight. He looked at his hands. The glow had faded, but he could still feel it under the surface, waiting. The viewscreen showed Ashara's body drifting among the rocks. Dan programmed the navigation computer to mark the location. She deserved better than becoming part of the asteroid field, but he did not know what else to do. Later. He would figure it out later. Gateway Station appeared 3 days later, a spinning wheel of metal and light against the black. Dan had not slept the entire trip. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw through Ashara's memories. He experienced her first flight between worlds. He felt her terror during the first attack. He knew the names of 17 dragons who had died screaming. His ship docked with a clang that Dan felt in his teeth. Everything was too much, too bright, too loud, too real. He shuffled through the airlock into the station proper. People moved past him in the corridor and he could feel them. Not just see them, but feel their presence like warm spots on a thermal scan. Emotions leaked off them like radiation. Annoyance, boredom, hunger, love, fear. A security officer stopped him at the first checkpoint. The woman looked at her scanner, then at Dan, then at her scanner again. Her face went pale. "Sir, I need you to come with me." Dan tried to argue, but 2 more officers appeared. They were polite but firm. He let them guide him to the medical bay, too tired to fight. The emotions pouring off them made his head hurt. Suspicion, worry, curiosity. Dr. Yuki Tanaka met them at the entrance. She was small, efficient, with gray hair pulled back tight. She took one look at Dan and her professional calm cracked slightly. "Get him in scanner 3, now." They put Dan on a table that slid into a white tube. Lights played over his body. Dr. Tanaka's voice came through a speaker. "Mr. Rivers, your cellular structure is reading as partially non-human. The scanner shows some kind of exotic matter bonded to your DNA. I need you to tell me what happened." Dan opened his mouth to answer. Instead, golden light burst from his eyes. The memory of Ashara's death projected outward like a hologram, filling the entire medical bay. Doctors and nurses stumbled backward, crying out as they experienced the dragon's final moments. They felt her pain. They saw the hunters. They understood. The projection lasted 15 seconds. When it faded, Dan slumped on the table, exhausted. Dr. Tanaka stood frozen, tears running down her face. "They are real," she whispered. "The dragons are real." Before Dan could respond, the bay doors slammed open. A tall man in Galactic Council uniform strode in, flanked by armed guards. Commander Ree had the kind of face that had forgotten how to smile years ago. "Daniel Rivers, I am placing you in protective custody by order of the Council. You are carrying unknown xenobiological material that poses a potential threat to station safety. Dan sat up slowly. The light under his skin pulsed brighter. She gave it to me, Ashara, the dragon. She gave me her power before she died. Dragons are extinct, Commander Ree said flatly. Have been for 3,000 years. Then explain what everyone in this room just saw. Ree's jaw tightened. He opened his mouth to respond but never got the chance. The entire station shuddered. Alarms began to wail. A junior officer burst through the doors, her face white with shock. Sir, we have 3 unknowns entering the station perimeter. Massive energy signatures. They are requesting permission to dock. Denied. This is a civilian station. We cannot allow. The officer interrupted him, something that clearly never happened. Sir, they say they are here for the human who carries the star fire. They say they are here for their sister's heir. Dan felt it then, 3 presences pressing against his awareness like suns coming over the horizon. Massive, ancient, angry. The dragons had come. The docking bay had been cleared, but people crowded the observation windows anyway. Dan stood in the center of the bay with Commander Ree and a dozen security officers, all of whom looked like they wanted to be anywhere else. Dr. Tanaka had insisted on coming. She stood close to Dan, scanner in hand, recording everything. The bay doors opened to vacuum. 3 shapes descended from the black, backlit by distant stars. The first dragon landed with impossible grace for something so large. Her scales were deep crimson, like cooling lava. She folded wings that could have wrapped around a small ship. Heat shimmered in the air around her. The second dragon was ice to her fire. Blue-white scales caught the station lights and scattered them like prisms. Frost formed on the deck where his claws touched down. His breath misted in the air. The third dragon was storm gray, crackling with static electricity. Small arcs of lightning jumped between her scales. The lights flickered when she moved. All 3 turned their massive heads toward Dan. 6 eyes, each larger than his torso, fixed on him with terrible focus. A voice spoke in every mind in the bay simultaneously. It was feminine, ancient, and sharp as broken glass. Who killed ASHRA? The red dragon had spoken. Dan felt her fury like standing too close to a furnace. I didn't kill her, Dan said out loud. His voice sounded small and fragile. She was dying when I found her, poisoned. She gave me her power before she died. Lies. The blue dragon's mental voice was cold as vacuum. No human could inherit dragon fire. You stole it from her corpse. Dan felt anger rise in his chest, hot and sudden. It was not entirely his own anger. Ashara's memories stirred, offended by the accusation. Without thinking, he raised his hand. Golden flame erupted from his palm, bright enough to cast hard shadows across the bay. The 3 dragons froze. The flames were unmistakable. Dragon fire. True dragon fire, not the pale imitations that some species could produce with technology. The gray dragon moved closer, lightning crackling louder. She lowered her enormous head until one eye was level with Dan. He could see himself reflected in the golden iris. Show us, she commanded. Dan did not know how, but Ashara's memories knew. He reached out and touched the dragon's scaled cheek. The connection opened like a floodgate. He showed them everything. Finding Ashara among the asteroids, holding her as she died, the transfer of power, the visions she had shared. Most importantly, he showed them what Ashara had shown him. The hunters with their ships and weapons. The green energy beams that could burn through dragon scales. The poison that ate through dragon biology from the inside. He showed them Ashara running, bleeding, desperate, knowing she was the last of her flight. The gray dragon pulled back. The 3 dragons looked at each other. Something passed between them, communication beyond what Dan could perceive. The red dragon, Solara, spoke again. Her mental voice was softer now, sad. We are called SOLARA, BOREAS, and TYPHON. We are all that remain of the North Spiral Flight. ASHARA was OUR sister. 12 of US have fallen in the past cycle. We thought her death was the end. Who is hunting you? Dr. Tanaka asked. Everyone turned to stare at her. She lifted her chin. Someone is using weapons specifically designed to kill dragons. That takes resources, planning. Who has that kind of capability? Boreas, the ice-blue dragon, made a sound like grinding glaciers. We do not know. The attacks come without warning. The weapons leave no trace. Even OURDEATHS serve them somehow. Dan felt sick. Through Ashara's memories, he knew what dragon remains were worth. Scales that could withstand stellar radiation, blood that could extend lifespans, organs that processed exotic matter, bones that resonated with gravitational fields. A dead dragon was a fortune waiting to be harvested. We find who killed her, Dan said. We stop them. Commander Ree stepped forward. This is a council matter now. We will investigate. A proximity alarm shrieked. The station shuddered again, harder this time. On the view screen above the docking bay, a sleek black ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. It was all angles and armor, built for violence. Weapons ports opened along its hull. Green light began to gather, the same sick color from Ashara's memories. Typhon roared, the sound reverberating through the deck plating. Hunters, they FOLLOWEDUS here. The black ship fired. 12 beams of green energy lanced toward the station. They were not aiming for the dragons. They were aiming for the civilian sections, trying to cause maximum casualties, maximum chaos. Dan felt something surge in his chest. Ashara's power and his own rage combining into something new. He threw his hands forward and golden light exploded from his body. It formed a dome over the entire docking bay, expanding outward to cover the station's hull. The green beam struck the shield. Reality screamed. Dan screamed with it. Holding the shield felt like holding back an avalanche with his bare hands, every muscle locked. His bones felt like they were vibrating apart. Then the 3 dragons added their power to his. Fire and ice and lightning poured into the golden shield, reinforcing it, strengthening it. The green beams splashed against the barrier and dissipated harmlessly. The black ship pulled back, clearly surprised. Dan held the shield until the ship stopped firing. When he finally let it drop, he collapsed. Dr. Tanaka caught him before he hit the deck. Solara's voice filled his mind, gentle now, almost proud. You are the inheritor. ASHARA chose well. They kept the black ship's crew in a cargo hold with armed guards at every entrance. There were 6 of them, all different species, all wearing black armor without insignia. Mercenaries. They had the look of people who killed for money and slept fine afterward. Dan sat across from their leader, a Quellan with blue skin and too many eyes. The Quellan watched Dan with the careful attention of a predator sizing up another predator. Commander Ree stood against the wall, furious at being sidelined but smart enough to recognize he had no leverage anymore. The 3 dragons were too large to fit in the cargo bay, but their presence pressed against everyone's awareness. They waited just outside, patient as mountains. Who hired you? Dan asked. The Quellan smiled, showing pointed teeth. We are independent contractors. Client confidentiality is part of our service. Golden light flickered under Dan's skin. He was getting better at controlling it, but emotion still made it surge. Right now, he was angry. Your client is hunting dragons. Ashara died because of people like you, so I will ask one more time. Who hired you? The Quellan's smile faded. You do not understand the position you are in, human. Kill us and 20 more crews will come. We are professionals. This is simply business. Boreas's mental voice cut through the room like an ice blade. We could freeze your blood in your veins. We could stop your hearts without touching you. Tell the inheritor what he wants to know. One of the other mercenaries, a human woman with scars across her face, broke. The Kryn Syndicate, they hired us. They have a facility on Rhea, one of Saturn's moons. That is where they take the dragons. The Quellan turned to glare at her, but she would not meet his eyes. They have dragons there. Dr. Tanaka leaned forward. Alive. The woman nodded miserably. 6 of them, last I heard. They keep them in stasis chambers. Harvest what they need without killing them. Dragon blood, spinal fluid, scale samples. They sell it to the highest bidders. Politicians, corporate heads, anyone rich enough. Dan felt sick. Through Ashara's memories, he knew what that would feel like. Dragons were not just intelligent. They were empathic, connected to each other, and to the universe in ways humans could barely understand. Being trapped, alone, slowly carved apart while conscious would be worse than death. The Syndicate has council protection, Commander Rhee said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. His face was gray. I was told not to investigate dragon sightings. I was told the rumors were just superstition. I thought I was preventing panic over nothing. You took bribes, Solara's voice was contemptuous. Not a question, a statement. My superiors took bribes, I followed orders. Rhee looked at Dan. I did not know, I swear I did not know they were real. Dan believed him mostly. The commander was guilty of being a coward, not a monster. There was a difference. How many people does the Syndicate have? Dan asked the mercenary woman. At the Rhea facility, maybe 200. Scientists, security, support staff, but they have private military contractors. Good ones. The facility is designed to withstand attacks. Typhon's laugh was like rolling thunder. Designed to withstand conventional attacks, not dragons. And definitely not dragon fire combined with human tactical thinking, Dan said. An idea was forming. Dangerous, probably stupid, but Ashara's memories pushed him forward. Her rage at being hunted, her sorrow for her lost family, her desperate hope that someone would stop the killing. Dr. Tanaka looked at him. You are planning a rescue. 6 dragons are being tortured. Ashara gave me her power to stop this, so yes, we are going to get them out. Commander Rhee straightened. I cannot authorize a military action against a corporate facility, even if what they are doing is illegal, the proper channels. The proper channels are bought and paid for, Dan interrupted. You said it yourself. How long do you think it will take for the council to act? How many more dragons die while we file paperwork? Rhee had no answer. Solara moved closer to the cargo bay entrance. Her massive head pushed through the doorway, scales scraping metal. Human, you understand what you offer. This is not your fight. You could walk away. Live your life. Dan met her enormous eye without flinching. Ashara made it my fight when she chose me. Besides, I have seen what they did to her, what they are doing to the others. Walking away is not an option. The 3 dragons were silent for a long moment. Then Boreas spoke. We will fly with you, inheritor. Together we will free our kin. Dr. Tanaka raised her hand like a student in class. I am coming too. If those dragons have been in stasis, they will need medical care. I can help. 3 station security officers stepped forward from the guards around the room. A big man named Wilson spoke first. We volunteer. This is wrong. Someone needs to stop it. Dan looked around the room. A ragtag group. 1 human freight hauler with stolen dragon powers. 3 angry dragons. 1 guilt-ridden doctor. 3 security guards. Against a fortified corporate facility with 200 staff and professional soldiers. Ashara's memories whispered to him. Sometimes the small and desperate one against the powerful and cruel. Sometimes courage mattered more than numbers. Then we plan, Dan said. We hit them fast, get the dragons out, and burn that place to bedrock. The black ship hung in space beyond the station. Dan looked at it through the window. And we are taking their ship. They owe us that much. The black ship, rechristened the Ashara's Vengeance by unanimous vote, cut through space toward Saturn's moons. Dan sat in the pilot's chair, still getting used to the controls. The ship was fast, deadly, and completely illegal in 12 different jurisdictions. Perfect. The three dragons flew alongside the ship in open space, keeping pace effortlessly. Watching them move was beautiful. Solara left trails of red light. Boreas froze the trace hydrogen into glittering clouds. Typhon crackled with constant lightning. They were weapons and art at the same time. Dr. Tanaka worked in what used to be the armory, converting it into a medical bay. Wilson and the other two security officers, Davies and Lynn, checked weapons and practiced in the ship's small cargo hold. Commander Rhee sat in the corner, filing reports that would probably get him fired. He had insisted on coming anyway. Dan felt the 6 captive dragons before they were in visual range. Their presence in his mind was faint, muted like voices heard through thick walls, but they were there, scared, in pain, waiting. Rhea appeared on the view screen, a small moon covered in ice. Scanning revealed a massive facility buried 2 kilometers beneath the surface. Power readings were enormous, life support for hundreds, and 6 very large biosignatures in the lower levels. "They know we are coming," Davies said, looking at the tactical display. "No way we get close without being detected." "Good," Dan said. "I want them to see us coming." Solara's voice filled the bridge. "We will make the first strike. Break their DFENSES. You follow behind and reach OUR kin." The ship dropped into Rhea's thin atmosphere. The dragons dove with it. Weapon emplacements on the ice opened fire, filling the sky with energy beams and projectiles. The dragons scattered, impossibly fast despite their size. Solara breathed fire that melted ice into steam. Boreas froze an entire turret solid, then shattered it with a flick of his tail. Typhon called down lightning from Rhea's magnetic field, overloading power systems across the facility's surface. Dan brought the ship down hard, using the chaos as cover. They landed near a damaged entry point, one of the turrets Boreas had destroyed. The cargo ramp dropped and everyone rushed out. The facility's interior was all white walls and bright lights, trying to look clean and medical. It fooled no one. This was a prison. They met resistance immediately. Security forces in body armor came around a corner, weapons raised. Dan threw up a golden shield without thinking. Bullets sparked off it harmlessly. Wilson and his team returned fire. The fight was brief and brutal. "Lower levels," Dr. Tanaka said, checking a terminal she had hacked. "The stasis chambers are in the sub-basement. We need to go down." They fought through 3 more security teams and a squad of combat drones. Dan was getting better at using Ashara's power. He could sense people around corners, feel their intentions. The dragon fire came easier now, more controlled. The stasis chamber was a nightmare. 6 massive cylindrical tanks filled the room, each one holding a dragon. They floated in green fluid, unconscious, with tubes and cables running into their bodies. Monitors showed vitals, harvest schedules, extraction rates. The dragons were labeled by number, not name. Dr. Tanaka ran to the controls. "They are alive but heavily sedated. If I wake them too fast, the shock could kill them." "We do not have time to be gentle," Commander Rhee said. The facility's alarms were screaming. More security forces were coming. "How long?" 10 minutes, maybe 15. Dan heard boots in the corridor. "A lot of boots. We do not have 15 minutes." Wilson and his team took defensive positions at the door. Dan stood with them, golden light already building in his hands. The security forces hit them like a wave. Dozens of armed soldiers, all professional, all trained. They came with grenades and energy weapons and combat tactics that should have overwhelmed 5 people. But they were not fighting 5 people. They were fighting someone with dragon fire in his veins. Dan let the power flow. He had been holding back, scared of it, scared of what it meant. Now he stopped holding back. Golden flames filled the corridor. He shaped them with his will, directing them like water from a hose. The flames did not burn people, not exactly. They burned intent, burning through aggression and hostility and the will to fight. Soldiers dropped their weapons and ran. Others fell unconscious. The few who pushed through found Wilson's team waiting with stunners. Behind Dan, the stasis tanks began to drain. The 6 dragons stirred. One opened its eyes. Director Voss appeared at the far end of the corridor. Dan knew him immediately from Ashara's memories. Tall, thin, with gray hair and eyes that looked at everything as a commodity. He had ordered Ashara's death. He had ordered all of them. But now Voss looked different. His skin had a faint golden sheen. His eyes glowed. Dragon essence, Dan realized. Voss had been injecting himself with dragon blood and tissue, trying to steal their power. "You cannot stop this," Voss said. His voice echoed strangely, layered as if multiple people spoke at once. "I have spent 20 years building this operation. Do you know what dragon immortality is worth? We are saving lives, extending human potential." "You are torturing sentient beings," Dan said flatly. "They are animals, resources, no different than cattle." One of the stasis tanks shattered. A dragon, smaller than Solara but with brilliant green scales, tore free of the restraints. She was weak, unsteady, but her rage was sharp enough to feel across the room. The dragon spoke directly into Voss's mind, loud enough that Dan heard it too. "I am NERA. I have LIVED for 8,000 years. I have seen stars born. I have taught your ANCSTORS to read the sky. I am not your resource." Voss pulled a device from his coat and pressed it. "Then you will die here." The entire facility shook. Dan felt it through his connection to the dragons. Explosives. Voss had rigged the whole place to collapse. 30 seconds, Voss smiled. Not enough time to save them all. So choose, Dragon Keeper, your people or the beasts. Dan did not choose. He reached for Ashara's power and for something deeper. The connection he felt to the 3 dragons outside. The connection forming with Nera and the others. All of it. He pulled it together and shaped it into something new. A dome of golden energy exploded outward, covering everyone in the chamber. Then Dan pushed, lifting the shield and everything it contained. He could feel the weight of 6 dragons, his team, the equipment. He could feel the explosives detonating above them. Dan pushed harder. The shield rose, tearing through rock and ice. He screamed with effort. Every cell in his body felt like it was tearing apart. Then other power joined his. The 3 dragons outside sensed what he was trying to do. They added their strength. The 6 captive dragons, weak but alive, added what little they could. The shield burst through the surface of Rhea just as the facility collapsed. Dan held everyone suspended in space while the moon shook beneath them. Then his strength gave out and everything went black. Dan woke up on his own ship. The rusty Pelican, not the Ashara's vengeance. He could tell by the smell. Oil and ozone and the peculiar scent of a life support system held together by hope and duct tape. Dr. Tanaka sat beside his bunk, looking exhausted but relieved. "You have been unconscious for 2 days. Your body was in shock. You pushed the dragon power way beyond human limits." "Did everyone make it out?" Dan's voice was rough. "Everyone. The 3 big ones grabbed your shield bubble and flew everyone back to Gateway Station. You are a hero, also possibly dead. Your heart stopped 3 times. Dan tried to sit up. His body protested but obeyed. "How am I alive?" "The dragons saved you, all 9 of them. They each gave you a piece of their essence, stabilizing what Ashara started. You are permanently bonded to them now." The doctor paused. "You are the first dragon speaker in 3,000 years. They told me the old ones could communicate with dragons, mediate between species. Everyone thought it was just legend." Dan felt it then, the connections. 9 threads of awareness linking him to 9 ancient beings. He could sense Solara nearby, her presence warm and fierce. Boreas's cool calm. Typhon's crackling energy. The 6 rescued dragons, still recovering but grateful. He stood slowly and walked to the porthole. Gateway Station hung in space beyond, but around it flew 9 dragons. They moved in patterns, weaving through the void, calling to each other in ways that made the stars seem to sing. Dr. Tanaka joined him at the window. The Galactic Council is in chaos. Director Voss escaped before the facility collapsed, but the evidence we recovered from their servers is everywhere now. Public outcry is forcing the Council to act. They are shutting down syndicate operations across 12 systems. Voss is still out there, Dan said. Yes, but now people know dragons are real. They know what was done to them. Most of the galaxy is horrified. She smiled slightly. Some are scared, a lot are both. Commander Ree appeared in the doorway. He looked like he had aged 10 years. The Council wants to meet with you, and the dragons. They are calling it a diplomatic summit, trying to save face. Tell them we will talk when we are ready, on our terms. Ree nodded and left. The man had resigned his commission and now worked as a volunteer coordinator, helping to locate other potential dragon hunting operations. Guilt made people do strange things. Over the next weeks, Dan learned what being a dragon speaker meant. The 9 dragons taught him their history, their language, their ways of seeing the universe. In return, he taught them about humans, about the messy, complicated nature of his species. Not all good, not all bad, just people trying to survive. Together, they established the Sanctuary, a mobile station that traveled with the dragons. The Rusty Pelican became its flagship, upgraded and expanded until she barely resembled the old cargo hauler. Wilson, Davies, and Lynn ran security. Dr. Tanaka led the medical team. More people joined every week, humans and aliens alike, all dedicated to protecting dragons and rebuilding trust between species. Dan stood in the common area of the sanctuary 6 months after Ashara's death. Through the massive windows, he watched Solara teach a young dragon how to ride solar winds. The dragon was one they had rescued from another syndicate facility. There were more out there. The work was not done. Neera approached Dan, her green scales gleaming. She was the one who spoke most often to the gathered species, the voice of dragons to the wider galaxy. Ashara chose well when she gave you her fire. I wish I could have saved her, Dan said quietly. She saved herself by finding you. Before you, we were dying in silence. Now the galaxy KNOWS we live. Now they must reckon with us. Her massive head lowered until one golden eye looked directly at him. She gave you more than power. She gave you purpose and family. Dan smiled. He looked around the sanctuary. Humans working alongside 4-armed Trellians. Quellan engineers sharing workspace with dragon scholars. Wilson teaching a young human girl how to safely approach a dragon. Dr. Tanaka laughing with Boreas about something only they found funny. Family, yes. The strangest family in the galaxy, born from tragedy and bound by choice. Outside, the stars streamed past as the sanctuary moved between systems. Dan felt Ashara's presence sometimes, not really there but not entirely gone either. A warmth in his chest, an echo of her voice in quiet moments. She had asked him to keep the fire alive, to let people remember, to show them dragons were real. Dan had done that, and he was just getting started.